I read 7 books in February, which isn't a lot in comparison to what I used to read. I remember if you look back at my previous wrap ups that I posted on here years and years ago, I was going for like 21 books a month, which is absolutely insane. But I've got these 7 books here, and honestly, this was a high quality month. This was very much quality over quantity. I had, I think, 3 5-star reads, like 3 solid 5-star reads, and then like 2 solid, like 4.5-star reads, and then another 4, and then a 3, and that's it. Like, that's such a good month. But starting off with my least favourite, which was 3 stars, this is A Crane Among Wolves, and this is a YA fantasy standalone. There's also some romance as well, and this is based off of real Korean history. So the country is under the rule of this tyrannical king who was based off of a real king in history. And the main character's sister gets kidnapped by the king, so she kind of has to leave her cushy, privileged life to infiltrate the palace to get her sister back. But honestly, I just didn't love this book. The thing I was most interested in was the world building and the history, but the actual plot itself, I just didn't really care about. I didn't like the main character, to be honest. She just was not interesting to me. And then the other main character, who's the love interest and the brother of the king, he also just didn't do anything for me. I didn't think the romance between them was really needed. I'd rather the book focused on the main character and her sister. There were definitely things that I was really interested in. That's why it was a 3, and also because it felt like it did what it needed to do in terms of its length. I didn't feel like the plot was too short or too long. It felt like the right length, and I also did enjoy the ending. That's something I did enjoy. But other than that, I was kind of bored throughout. Okay, from now on, it's just into the good stuff and stuff I really liked. So most recently, I read Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler, and this is a dystopian book, but it was written in the 90s, and it's set kind of between 2024 and 2027. So it was weird because I was reading it in February 2025, and there's literally a date or multiple dates in that month, in that year, and it was so weird to read about. And it's oddly realistic. Like, she predicted the future essentially. But it's set in a world where climate change has kind of destroyed the planet. It's set in America, and it follows the main character who kind of is more well off than a lot of people in the country at the time, and yet her life is still really difficult. She lives in a gated community in LA, and it's constantly being infiltrated by thieves and arsonists and stuff. But because the world is just in such dire conditions, there isn't really anyone to help them. Like, she mentioned that a crime will not have any witnesses unless it takes place in front of a police station, and certain fires won't be put out because they don't have the water. So if a fire isn't that important, then they just won't put it out. They'll just let a house burn down. I really like the conversations the book had. It talked a lot about religion, which I found really interesting because the main character starts questioning everything she knew, because I feel like that's quite realistic for a character to be having a crisis in faith when they're going through so much difficulty and suffering. There was like a section of the book where she was talking about how a hurricane that was caused by climate change like killed 700 people, and it was mainly poor people that were killed. And she was questioning why God didn't save them, and was asking if it was like a sin to be poor. I just love the conversations that she was having. The reason it's a 4 not a 5 is because I actually preferred the first half. Every review I've seen, people say they prefer when everything starts to kick off in the second half. But I really liked the slower pace of the first half and just the day-to-day life that we were getting introduced to in the first half, because the second half is just a lot more plot and a lot of travelling around and on the run, and I just don't like that in books when characters are kind of moving from one place to another and running about and making rest stops and stuff. That's just not something I ever really liked to read in a book. I just preferred when she was still in her community and talking about the impact of dystopian setting on her community. Another book I also read, and also one of the 3 5-stars I had, is The Wild Huntress, and this is a YA fantasy standalone that's based off of Welsh folklore, and it follows 3 characters who team together to enter into this wild hunt because the king awards them, or awards the winners of the hunt, with a wish. And each of them have their own individual reasons. Some of them are a bit more obvious than the others, or a bit more open about their reasons for wanting to win than the others. But I just loved this so much. I thought the 3 main characters were so distinct and likable, and I honestly kind of liked the romance that was set up in this. There's not much of it, which honestly is a breath of fresh air, and I just really enjoyed this. The writing was so like folklore based. It felt like reading a fairy tale, which I absolutely love books that are written like that. And the plot does take a turn in the last third of the book, and I just really appreciated that because as I was reading it and I got to the middle, I was like, I can kind of see where this is going to go. Like, I've read books before that were quite similar, and whilst the writing in this and the characters and the world were really unique, I could kind of predict where the plot was going to go, and then the author just did a 180 and changed it, and I was really happy about that. My other 5-star read and my favourite book of the month, and my favourite book for lots of months, probably since like last September or something like that, is The Night in the Moth by Rachel Gillig, and this is my advanced reader's copy that was gifted to me by Orbit, and I love this so much. This is a first book in a new duology, I think it might be. It's an adult romantasy book. It's gothic. It is so good. I love this so much. It's set in a world where there's these 5 omens or 5 gods that are held in very high regard. They're kind of viewed as being responsible for saving this city from war. And in the centre of it all, there's a chapel or an abbey where there's an abbess. And every 10 years, she gathers diviners, and she does this by going to the orphanages basically and taking children from there. And what the diviners do is they dream and they like connect with the omens in their dream and basically tell people if they're going to have good luck or bad luck. And at the start of the book, this entire knighthood shows up with the new king, and the king wants his omens read to see if he's going to be favoured by the gods or not. And it all just kind of kicks off from there. After they visit, the diviners start disappearing one by one, and the main character teams up with the king and a bunch of his knights to figure out what happened to the diviners, who she kind of views as sisters. And I just love this book so much. The plot is definitely simple, like it followed a very linear structure, but I just appreciated that because I love the characters so much. I love the writing. There's a side character who's a gargoyle, and honestly, is the sweetest gargoyle ever. He just says the most contemplative, philosophical things in the most random times, and he's just so lovable, and he calls everyone Bartholomew, and it just makes me laugh so much, and I am so excited for this book to be released in May so other people can read it and know exactly what I'm talking about. Definitely my favourite book in a long time. And finally, I'm going to group the last 3 books together, and that's the Emily Wilde trilogy. The first is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, and that's the one I gave 5 stars. I do think if I reread the other 2, I'd probably give them 5 stars as well, because as soon as I put down the last book, which is Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales, as soon as I put that down, I was like, I need to read that again. I feel like I didn't appreciate it when I was reading it, and then as soon as I finished, I was like, wait, that was so good. First one was 5 stars, and the second 2 I'd say were like 4.5. The second one definitely is my least favourite, but there was nothing wrong with it, to be honest. I wouldn't really change much about it. But yeah, this series follows Emily Wilde, who is a scholar, specifically a fairy scholar. So in this world, fairies are just known to exist. Like, they interact with humans. There's different kinds. There's like high fae, who are the ones who have like their own worlds in royalty, and they kind of look like humans as well. But there's like other kinds of fae who are a bit more like powerless or small or helpless. And it just follows Emily Wilde, who is writing an encyclopedia, and one of the missing pieces of information are these fae called the Hidden Ones that live in Norway, and no one's really written about them before, so she feels like they would be a great addition to her encyclopedia. So she travels there herself, but then her academic rival Wendell shows up just unannounced and kind of causes chaos. But honestly, I'm very thankful that he showed up because I love Emily and Wendell so much. I really need to reread this series. I think I might wait until the summer because they do feel like quite spring summery books, even though the first book is literally set in winter. They just feel like fresh air, if that makes sense. Like, a lot of it takes place in like the forest or the woods. It's just, they're very nature focused books, and I just love them so much. But yeah, those are the 7 books I read in February, and that was a really good reading month. I don't normally have that good luck. I normally have at least like 3 stars and some 2 stars as well. Let me know what you read in February, and if you liked any of these books as well, let me know. But yeah, I'll see you all in the next one.